Hi, friends. Let's talk about estrogen dominance and menopause or perimenopause. It's a topic that I'm really passionate about because, the interesting thing is that we think like, hey, I'm in perimenopause, like I'm headed for, for this time of my life, and I know my estrogen is dropping. There's just no way I can have estrogen dominance, right? And that is incorrect. In fact, having estrogen dominance when you are going through perimenopause makes menopause so much worse. And then when you are already in menopause or even postmenopausally speaking, estrogen dominance is really problematic. If you think about it, most cancers that get fueled by estrogen, like estrogen receptor positive cancers, are estrogenic cancers. And so, and they will happen later in life. And so I thought it's really important to explain that. And it's completely understandable that it doesn't make any sense to you right now. So I want to give you, I'm gonna explain there's two types of estrogen dominance and how this happens and why is it particularly problematic. So, I remember when my book came out, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, and one of my colleagues, a lady who was working for us, and she had the book lying on the kitchen counter, like right here, kind of a thing. And then her mom came to visit, and her mom has been having lost her uterus in her 40s because of fibroids, has always been having really heavy periods, and then she ended up having breast cancer. And so she picked up the book and she's like, "Oh, nice book." And she knew that her daughter was working on the team, and she put it back down. And then my colleague says to her, "Mom, you should be reading this book." And she's like, "No, I'm in menopause. Like, I don't have estrogen dominance. I'm not dominant," and so understandably so, because the name estrogen dominance will imply that you are dominant in estrogen, you have a lot of it, and when you're in menopause, you are low in it, so there's just no way you can have it. So that is incorrect. And so I I want to explain how that happens. So let me start off by saying first, there's two types of estrogen dominance, and we're going to be moving forward, we're going to be calling it type 1 and type 2 estrogen dominance, because I think that way is going to be really easy for you to understand the difference. So type 1 estrogen dominance happens when the ratio of estrogen to progesterone is off, meaning that even though both of them are low and they've dropped as you're going into perimenopause or you're in menopause, there's an imbalance between them nevertheless, even though both of them are low. Okay. And when I say there's an imbalance, it's typically progesterone that is significantly lower, too low to oppose estrogen. And so correcting that kind of estrogen dominance basically requires having elevating your progesterone level either with bioidentical progesterone or using things like chasteberry, also known as Vitax, or you might want to look at increasing a supplementation of like vitamin C, vitamin E, zinc. All of those can help. Now, type 2 estrogen dominance is happening when your estrogen gets broken down to two types. It's basically get metabolized in the liver and your gut to clean estrogens, which are great and protective. Those makes us beautiful women and gives us sharp minds and beautiful, nice skin and healthy bones and good cognitive functions and solid, stable moods, right? And then it gets also broken into dirty estrogens, which are the problematic estrogens. And those are the ones that, in the case of, for example, breast cancers, they are the ones that multiply cause the growth of a cancer. And so and cause a lot of inflammation in the body as well. Somebody's asking here about, like autoimmune diseases and so having Raynaud's in menopause. I'm going to read you the symptoms of estrogen dominance in just a second, but you will see that inflammatory responses are being elevated when you have estrogen dominance, definitely can worsen the symptoms, and including autoimmune diseases. So yes, it doesn't cause it, but it can worsen it, that's for sure. Also, estrogen dominance causes a lot of other challenges, and we're going to get to the symptoms list actually, let me just go through it right away. I've actually categorized them into groups because it's actually a pretty long list. So, and if you want to help someone, and as I'm going down the list, and if you feel like your girlfriend or a woman that's close in your life is suffering from these, just feel free to tag her, because it can really change somebody's life, So the first thing is having cycle changes. So if you're one of these women who have been having a lot of changes now or before, challenges with your periods, so such as mid-cycle spotting, which by the way is super common when there's estrogen, that the type 1 estrogen dominance, the estrogen progesterone ratio is off. You might see like some brown spotting in the panties during ovulation. So mid-cycle spotting, painful periods, having a history of PMS, heavy periods, scanty periods, irregular periods, right? It could also be inflammatory. So estrogen dominance can cause inflammatory changes, such as causing hot flashes, allergies. So hey guys, if you missed it out, we talked about allergies a lot just a couple of weeks ago. You can go back to our feed on Facebook or Instagram and see, the connection between estrogen dominance causes the mast cells to produce more histamine. Histamine then causes allergies. And so a lot of women have reported, it's like, hey, when the allergies come, like my symptoms of estrogen dominance are worse. And so actually what we have found is when you reduce estrogen dominance, your tolerance to allergies is becoming much better. Uterine changes, that's a big one. Fibroids, uterine polyps, endometriosis, right? That's, and doctors don't tell you this. And it's like, instead we get this myectomies, and women are put on Lupron, and and this like young women get pushed into menopause and have all these crazy symptoms, and and our uteruses get removed, and it's like it's not always necessary, and especially if the fibroid or the uterine polyps which they are benign, they are not cancerous, they can be removed, and they can be, like if a fibroid is large, then I think opting for something like embolism is actually a good idea, because they're cutting the supply of blood to the uterus, right? And so it will shrink, and then addressing it by the options I'm going to give you in a second, which is, addressing estrogen dominance, which is the leading cause, what causes the growth of the fibroid, is really the way to go. External changes, so things that you can see on your body, right? Things like hair loss, but other than the thyroid, because I find that the thyroid is the leading cause of hair loss. And so after that, like if you're having, hair loss and you have ruled out that it's not the thyroid, then look into estrogen dominance. That was my problem. Spider or varicose veins, bloating, puffiness, and water retention. Like when you just can't take your rings off, your shoes don't fit, and it's like, it feels really tight, right? Cellulite and stubborn butt and thigh fat. So women who are estrogenic tend to put on weight around, we carry weight around our butts, and we have like big ass, big thighs, right? We have the we have the pears. Women who tend to store it around their abdomen, right, in the middle section, those women, the proverbial apples, tend to be more of what we call with a metabolic disorder. So typically high blood sugar levels, high testosterone, PCOS potentially, right? Insulin resistance, blood sugar levels, that kind of thing. But here's the thing, right? Like you can be hitting the gym like, 5 times a week and working really hard on it without realizing actually what's happening is that, and you can lose that weight. Like that cellulite doesn't budge. The weight just doesn't budge. And so here's the thing, right? Address estrogen dominance, and that way you can help yourself. That weight is gonna start coming down a lot faster. Another one on the external changes is melasma. Melasma is like the browning of discoloration of your skin. It typically happens above your lips. It can happen on the sides here. A lot of women have that here, and right above your eyebrows on your forehead. I had terrible melasma in my late 20s, early 30s when I went on birth control. And by the way, for those women who react really badly to birth control, especially those ones with the estrogen in it, they already telling you might be having estrogen dominance because you're really reacting badly to birth control. And so I had a horrible reaction And I mean, my mood swings were out of, and it was kind of ironic, right? Here you are, want to be sexually active, and you are like in the worst mood ever. Like the last thing you want is have sex, or the guy is the last thing you want to do is have sex with you, because you just want to be like, cut his, bite his head off. So anyway, so that's about birth control. But anyway, melasma, it's kind of, it pains me to see, like, women then going and doing all this whitening products and procedures in in the spas. And the truth is that like, it works for a while, it costs a lot of money, it thins your skin, and it comes back, right? And so the best thing to do is address estrogen dominance, and the skin is going to improve. All right, breast changes, the next category. Fibrocystic breasts, breast cysts, right? And then large, swollen, and very tender breasts, whether it's cyclical or non-cyclical. Next category is cognition and mood. Brain fog. You're like, brain fog, for those of you, we always get questions about brain fog. It's like you're thinking, but like things just isn't happening. Like you feel like you're behind a fog, right? So depression, irritability, mood swings, anxiety, but also headaches and migraines, particularly before your period or mid-cycle, can be due to estrogen dominance. Sleeping problems. So sleep meaning could be trouble falling asleep, trouble staying asleep, and reduced deep sleep. You would know that if you're using the Oura Ring or some other device like Apple Watch or Fitbits, where it tells you your deep sleep. And typically sleep gets impacted by type 1 estrogen dominance, where there's just insufficient progesterone, because progesterone is what works in GABA receptors, and it calms you down, kind of like helps you wrap up the day and helps you stay asleep. Digestive changes. So the big one is gallstones, gallbladder problems, and removal. It works both ways, meaning how many of you here have had your gallbladder removed, or someone who's had the gallbladder removed, and then without realizing, maybe 3 to 6 months later, maybe a year later, suddenly having a lot of symptoms of estrogen dominance, and you go, and we don't make the connection. Neither do doctors tell us that removal of gallbladder can actually cause estrogen dominance. How? Because the bile, which gets stored in the gallbladder, the bile gets produced in the liver, right? And it helps you metabolize fats. And that's the first function of bile, is help you metabolize fat so that your body can use that fat and convert it into HDL cholesterol, which is then precursor for producing all your steroid hormones, such as testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, DHEA, testosterone, right? All these hormones. Isn't that great? But if you're not digesting the fats properly, then you're low in HDL cholesterol, which doctors a lot of times don't even, look at the health. They just look at the LDL cholesterol and be like, oh, you got high cholesterol. Like, what about my good cholesterol? I need that too to function, right? So that's the first thing, the problem with the bile. The other problem with the bile is that when it's insufficient bile, what happens is bile actually binds up those dirty estrogens we talked about. Those, the type 2 estrogen dominance, when you're producing too many dirty estrogens, bile is there to bind it up and helps you basically poop those estrogens out. And that might not be happening, or might not be happening as effectively or efficiently, right? So again, doctors don't tell us this, right? And you're like, I never made a connection. So many women have told us this before, like, hey, you know what? Now that you say it, I realize I had my gallbladder removed. A year later, I got this fibroid just came out of nowhere. I mean, it doesn't come out of nowhere, right? We just don't know. So the way that it works the other way around is that when you're estrogen dominance can also cause the bile to thicken. And when it thickens, you get gallstones, and the gallstones then end up, producing, there's just too many of them, and you end up having a removal of your gallbladder. So it's a two-way street between your hormones and gallbladder. Sexuality and fertility, low libido, subclinical fertility, miscarriages in the first trimester, right? If you have had a history of those, and this is the classical thing I see with women. It's like a woman who's been having difficult periods, terrible PMSs, doctor tells them it's normal, it's part of being a woman, right? And then having difficulty getting pregnant, having numerous miscarriages, right? It tells you again, possibly type 1 estrogen dominance, estrogen progesterone is off. And then finally getting pregnant, maybe by fluke, maybe by IVF or whatever was the method, and then having difficult pregnancy, delivering a baby, then having, like fibroids, right? Five years later. And the trajectory continues. An interesting thing is like, these things don't just happen, you guys. That's all due to estrogen dominance, right? So then hormonal changes. So the connection between estrogen dominance and how does it play to other hormones is low thyroid function. So for those of you who have thyroid issues, you probably know you're producing T4 hormone. And if you are on like Synthroid, that's a synthetic version of T4 that you're giving your body, that your body is not producing on its own. T4, then it gets converted to T3. T3 thyroid hormone is what gives you, is your power horse, right? We have receptors for T3 mainly in the body. So like your brain, your digestion, your skin, it's basically T3 is responsible for you being sharp and energetic. It helps you convert fat to energy and so on and so forth. And so when you have estrogen dominance, the T4 to T3 conversion can be impaired. And that explains why a lot of women, are put on Synthroid and they are not converting correctly because of either estrogen dominance or because they've got issues, because their liver function is poor. They're not converting that to T3. And they're like, I'm taking that Synthroid, but I'm still tired, man. And you go to see your endocrinologist and they go, higher dose. And you go higher dose and it works for 2 weeks. And then you're like, I feel so horrible, right? And so that explains hopefully why that happens. Now, another one is high blood sugar levels. Estrogen can desensitize the receptors for insulin. So it can contribute towards insulin resistance and PCOS. Part of the reason why estrogen dominance is correlated with PCOS because with PCOS, you have high testosterone. Testosterone gets converted to estrogen, and that's what can be causing estrogen dominance too. Cancers and nodules. So thyroid nodules, very common. In fact, the leading cause of thyroid nodules is estrogen dominance. And then cancer. So I'm sure all of you heard about breast cancer, estrogen receptor positive, as well as something that women don't know and doctors don't tell us this is that progesterone receptor positive breast cancers are actually correlated with estrogen receptors. So estrogen is what upregulates the progesterone receptor, and you end up having, so it's not the progesterone that's causing the cancer, it's actually the estrogen that causes the cancer. It upregulates the progesterone receptors on the cancer cells. Ovarian cancers, uterine cancers, lung cancer, thyroid cancer, all estrogenic cancers. Endometrial cancer as well. Okay. Wow. Can you imagine? Like, I just took 15 minutes talking about symptoms. It's like, you tell me who is a woman that who has not had this, right? So as I'm reading these crazy lists of symptoms, like, what are some of the biggest ones for you guys? Like, what are you, like, when you're listening to this, you're like, oh yeah, my goodness, I never knew this one. So I'm just going to go down the list really quickly, just in case you're joining us late. Mid-cycle spotting, painful periods, PMS, heavy periods, scanty periods, irregular periods, hot flashes, allergies, autoimmune diseases, fibroids, uterine polyps, endometriosis, hair loss, spider or varicose veins, bloating, puffiness, water retention, cellulite, stubborn butt and thigh fat, melasma, which is brown spotting on the skin, especially face, fibrocystic breast, breast cysts, enlarged, swollen, tender breast, brain fog, depression, irritability, mood swings, anxiety, headaches, or migraines, particularly before a period or mid-cycle, trouble falling asleep, trouble staying asleep, reduced deep sleep, gallstones, gallbladder problems, or removal, low libido, subclinical fertility, miscarriages, especially in the first trimester, low thyroid function, high blood sugar levels, insulin resistance, PCOS, estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine, lung, thyroid, endometrial cancer, thyroid nodules. Woo! Yeah. Okay, so as you can tell from this list of symptoms, you can be in menopause and experience some of them, right? And so what I have also found through this work is that estrogen dominance doesn't impact just young women. And you don't have to be estrogen dominant, like have a lot of estrogen in order to experience this. Because remember, type 1, your ratio is off. In type 2, is your how you breaking down at estrogen is unfavorable. In fact, if you think about it, most women who develop breast cancers or estrogenic cancers are actually, like 55 and above, right? And inherently, without doubt, this is when our estrogen progesterone keeps coming down. So why do we suddenly develop estrogenic cancers? It is because estrogen can be dominant in those years. Estrogen is the culprit. And this is the reason why I named the talk today, is that estrogen dominance in menopause, the later part of your years, is actually really problematic, because it is not really the women who are estrogen dominant in the young years that are, having a lot of challenges, is the later years. And what I have found by doing this work is that when you resolve estrogen dominance, then you're going through perimenopause becomes a lot easier. You just kind of get to sail through it rather than be going through, a proverbial shitstorm. And then when you're in menopause as well, is the same thing applying. Like menopause, we think of menopause as like going through this hell, right? And like we almost are discarded as women of just being this, like our prime years are over. We are like kind of moody and forgetful and kind of like half a woman. And at the same time, I also feel like, as I'm going through perimenopause myself, and I see some women who are really healthy menopause, it's like they can be the most creative years. Those are the years that you can actually really focus on yourself. Those are the years where, we can really flourish, where it can be about us. I also feel like our tolerance for bullshit kind of, decreases, but it's also, we just stop doing things that we should be doing, but we just do things that serve us well. And I'm not saying this from a selfish perspective. It's just like, your cup needs to be full in order for everyone else to benefit from it, right? Your cup is not full, you're sick and tired and dysfunctional, and everyone around you in your family takes care of that. So, okay, so how do you address estrogen dominance? So I want to give you a heads up. There's a couple of things I want to point you in the direction right away, because I know I've been talking a lot, and many of you are like, okay, so what do I do now, right? Which I love that question, because I'm all about solutions and action, and not just about like, here's a problem and just cooking in the problem instead of giving you guys solutions. So give me a second. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, I want to tell you that next week we open up doors to our online program called Overcoming Estrogen Dominance. It's called Estrogen Reset Life. So I don't remember the name of my own program. How embarrassing is that? Okay, so the book is called Overcoming Estrogen Dominance that I wrote 2 years ago. But the program is going to be a 6-week program. Dr. Stephanie and I, who's a naturopath, are leading the whole program. It's going to be live with live support, live Q&As, which we're going to be guiding you step by step. What do you do to reverse estrogen dominance, to free yourself of these symptoms, to help you sail through menopause? So make sure you are on our mailing list, or you stay connected with us through Facebook, Instagram, and you will see posts about how to join. And the program starts towards the end of April. I think is the 24th the actual program starts. But the sooner you join, the better, because then you can kind of get organized and plan your meal plans and go shopping and that kind of stuff. In the meantime, there's a couple of things. If I'm a very, very staunch believer that diet is foundational, right? I can talk to you about supplements. In fact, I'll make a lot more money talking about supplements on this call than talking about diet. But then I would not be truthful, and I would not be coming from a place of integrity. So, get any anti-inflammatory diet books, right, that you like, that resonates with you. If you want to support us, look at Overcoming Estrogen Dominance on Amazon. I think it's on Book Depository as well. And the whole book is based on, on a diet that that's how I eat every day. And the whole idea is to help you lower inflammation, help your body metabolize estrogen. Remember, I talked about estrogen dominance type 2, where the breakdown of estrogens isn't all that beneficial. You're producing too many dirty estrogens. And so that can, by supporting your liver, supporting your gut, you can really reset that. So with a diet, right? And bringing in a lot of foods that help you metabolize estrogen. So I talk about that in the book, Overcoming, Estrogen Dominance. Let me actually pick up a copy of the book so you guys can see it. It looks like this, right? So you can see like pomegranates and cilantro and sprouts and radishes and whatever else that was on the cover. So, and then if you also want to, I find that supplements are wonderful and kind of like, when you combine supplement and diet, it's like 1 + 1 = 5. You know what I mean? If you just do supplement alone, I don't think you can out supplement a good, like just cure it by supplementation alone. I really think it's gonna be hard. And when I was in private practice years ago, I'm not anymore, but when I was, I'll have women coming with bags of supplements to my place, and they're like, nothing is working. I'm still so symptomatic. I'm having all these issues, right? And then they will be spending like $500 a month, on supplements and still feel crap. And then I'll be like, have you changed your diet? And they're like, no, my doctor never talked to me about it. My doctor just gave me a lot of supplements. And I always feel very angry about that, right? Because it's just like, you know why, right? But anyway, so some of the supplements that can be super helpful is we actually are having like a thing this week. We talk about the menopause kit. If you go to wellena.com, our website, you will see the kit there. So ultimately what you want to do is add a couple of supplements, like our Wise Women Balance is a really nice supplement that helps you break the estrogens down correctly, right? So we've got things like DIM and sulforaphane and calcium D-glucarate in there, and some nice herbs in order to elevate your estrogen slightly. We also have Vitex in it that helps you bump up progesterone very, very gently. And then we also have progesterone in that kit, right? So that's a really nice combo that might help you a lot. If you have, if you don't want to buy so many supplements, I would say the Wise Women Balance is a really awesome one. And if you're on our mailing list, we've got a $5 off. Right now, if you're buying 3 bottles, you get $15 off. So if you just go to wellena.com, WELLENA. Sorry, I'm on my own today, by the way. My lovely colleague Jen, who's typically with me, and she's like the ninja, answering you guys and putting up a lot of nice things on the screen. She's on vacation this week, so I've got I just want to focus on talking and answer your questions, and so I'm not going to be farting around with like the computer getting the things up on the screen. So so that's basically what could be helpful. So go to wellena.com. You see it on the main page, the perimenopause kit. It also contains estrogen boost. That supplement contains Norwegian spruce, which can help to elevate estrogen just a tiny bit. Now, remember, those are phytoestrogens. Those are not estrogens that are going to give you estrogen dominance. I'm actually in the midst of writing an article just explaining what phytoestrogens do, because there's a lot of confusion around, oh my gosh, like, if I eat a lot of flaxseed, I'm going to give myself estrogen dominance. No, those are phytoestrogens. Phytoestrogen is actually 0.1% of what estradiol is. So for those of you who are doing estradiol topically, or you're doing it in Chorkeys or whatever, then you know that phytoestrogen is 0.1% of an estradiol. So it's super gentle, but at the same time, it's incredible what they can do. And I'll tell you more about it when the article is ready. I'm doing a lot of research and writing about this right now. So, okay, let me look at some of the questions that are coming in, and then we can have some fun. And so somebody's saying, how do you know if you are type 1 or 2? So that's a good question. So type 1 estrogen dominance versus type 2 estrogen dominance. And when you're low on so in type 1, you're low on progesterone. And that's typically will manifest. You can do some testing. I'll talk about it in a second. But going by symptoms, it's like you suddenly start having sleeping problems, which you never had before. You start having mid-cycle spotting. You are having a lot of anxiety and kind of like unrestfulness. You suddenly become like, I worry about everything. And you're like going like, I've never been like that before. I've always been very chill and very level-headed. And here I am suddenly like worrying about everything. So those are some of the progesterone works on the GABA receptors in the brain. So you might have taken GABA at night before and you're like, oh, it's really nice. It calms me down. So this is where in terms of testing, you can do testing, do Dutch, DUTCH, Dutch lab test, which is a urine test. You can also do saliva test that shows you progesterone levels. Do not do blood testing for steroid hormones. They will not show you the correct numbers. And type 2 can also be measured the same way. In fact, type 2, the only way you can see the metabolites is if you do it through urine. Saliva does not do that. Okay, so I've already talked about which supplements are you recommending if you have, if you're on hormone therapy. So hormone therapy does not interfere with anything. I mean, I would just not do, if you're doing already progesterone in some other form, then I would not do our progesterone cream, which is in a menopausal kit. But if you are only doing estrogen, then progesterone is actually very, very welcome and desired because, for some reason, allopathic medicine does not recognize the fact that we need to have a balance of estrogen and progesterone. In fact, when a woman has a full hysterectomy and sometimes they don't put her on any hormones whatsoever, and in the best case scenario, they'll put her on estradiol, right? And because they'll say, you don't need progesterone because progesterone is only for women who want to get pregnant. And it's like completely ignoring the fact that even menopausal and postmenopausal and perimenopausal women need progesterone. My sleep is not the same with and without progesterone. I take progesterone, my Oura ring tells me that my sleep can be up to 2 hours that night. I don't do progesterone, my deep sleep is not the same. So it's really, really important to recognize that. So somebody's saying about they quit flaxseed because of it. Yeah, so just stay tuned for that. I'm hoping to get the article out next month. I have PMDD. Is estrogen dominance the cause? Yes. So address that. Sorry, I did not talk about PMDD. I need to add that to the list. Breast cyst, yes, definitely. By estrogen dominance. And in fact, we have a product called Happy Sisters that helps you break the estrogens down. It helps you introduce poke root. It's in a cream that helps with lymphatic stagnation in the breast. It's a really cool formula. Okay. Am I a functional doctor? No, I'm a functional nutritionist. And I do not do private consultations. But if you are, if you need help with like working with someone, they just write to us at support@hormonesbalance.com. And then you can, we will just refer you to someone who might be a really good fit for you. Okay, so somebody's asking, hold on, this one here. Does camu berry help with producing progesterone? Yes, it can, because camu is very high in vitamin C. And so, yeah, so for some people that's enough. Now remember that everyone is a little different, right? So, if your body, first of all, you got to have your uterus. If you don't have a uterus, you lost your ovaries, then this method is not going to help. Then you might want to defer to, Vitex or topical progesterone. But yes, so vitamin C can definitely help. In fact, when COVID came and I upped my vitamin C levels, my cycle went to a fuller 28 days. I'm going through perimenopause. So total disclosure, and you guys, I'm totally open about my health and some of the challenges. I'm not perfect. I'm good. I'm great on most of the time, but there is, things that I still need to work on. So I'm going through perimenopause, right? And so one of the ways, perimenopause starts creeping in is that my cycles are not 28 days anymore. My periods are not 4 or 5 days anymore. There's just like, my cycle now is down to 22 days. Periods are like 2 days. There are a lot more scanty, right? And so so during COVID, I took a lot more vitamin C, and actually my cycle has improved, had gone back to like 26 days. It's back again now to lower, but it can temporarily help. If Kamo Kamo is not helping you, Sarah, then the option you have is to look into Vitex. And, some women do great with Vitex. Other women do not do great with Vitex. I'm one of them. My ovaries start throbbing. I get mid-cycle spotting, which is kind of like the opposite of what's supposed to help with. So a lot of really great option. Okay, and so let's see. So let's take a look at this one. Chris and Marie says, I've been guessing that my symptoms post-menopause have been related to low estrogen rather than high. One of them is UTIs and incontinence, because I heard that as estrogen lowers the gallbladder walls, thins, and women becomes more susceptible to infections. Absolutely, yes. And if you are having recurring UTIs and like suddenly having like BV, so bacterial vaginitis, or incontinence, right? It is definitely due to low estrogen, or can be certainly due to low estrogen. Now, Chris, so correcting estrogen levels will definitely help. Doing some topical stuff there. We like Dr. Anna Quebeca's product called Julva, Julva, so like jovial vulva, and it's got DHEA in it, and it can really help to. So estrogens, one of the roles of estrogen is that it really helps you create the right bacterial environment down there, right? And the lack of that is that you basically lose muscle tone, bacterial infections start setting in, UTIs can happen, and incontinence, which is kind of like terrible. Like you go to the gym and you're like, oh, or you can't. Like a lot of women who are going through that, and you're like, I cannot laugh when I'm standing, right? And you're like, oh. So anyway, however, what I want to say, Chris, is that yes, so definitely correcting estrogen in your case is the way to go. Now, does it mean you don't have estrogen dominance? No. I mean, you can have correcting estrogen here is probably the way to go. But if you're having symptoms, the ones that I read just now at the beginning of this call, then it could also be that a woman can have low estrogen and still have estrogen dominance, right? But in your case, it sounds like correcting estrogen will be the right way to go. Michelle is saying, how do we find out if estrogen dominant if I had hysterectomy and oophorectomy and Everol patches now at 100 milligrams, but been poorly since my op with stomach and bowel issues? Yeah, so I'm assuming you're in the UK or Australia. That's why you spell estrogen with an O in front. So one of the ways is just going by symptoms, right? And the other way is to find, I think Dutch does testing in the UK. So if you find a provider here in the US, you can order that for you and ship that over to the UK, or you find a functional doctor who can do tests like that in the UK. That's the best way to do it. I don't know what Everol is. I'm assuming it's like estrogen patches. And so it's typical, right? Like they give you estrogen, but they don't give you progesterone. So Michelle, it's, if you can get hold of my book and then work with a functional doctor in the UK to help you balance your hormones and correct that not just estrogen is needed, but also progesterone is needed. And then what else is causing your stomach and bowel issues? Is it food sensitivities? This is the reason why, my book, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, is based on the elimination diet. And it does not use things like gluten, dairy, soy, corn, eggs. It's highly anti-inflammatory. And so a lot of women have good results with that in addressing their symptoms and estrogen dominance. Kelly's asking about confused when we should be applying progesterone. Kelly, there is I wrote a lot about it. If you go to our blog, which is hormones with an S, hormonesbalance.com, we have a whole article about how to apply progesterone, where to apply progesterone, whether you want quick release or you want slow release. So a lot of things like that there. So yeah. Wow, Nikki's saying, I lost track at 30 symptoms. That's a lot, girl. One of the things I would like to share with you is and I'm going to create a banner just to say that. It's like, you have 20 symptoms, change your diet, 18 will go away. I'm serious. As a young practitioner, when I was in private practice, I will work with women, do this health intake, right? And be like, wow, so many symptoms. And it's like fatigue and sleeplessness and incontinence and, fibroids and this and that. I mean, you just, you name it. And the list just goes on and on. And when I first came out of nutrition school, I wasn't really, I didn't know what I know today, right? And so you kind of tend to chase every single symptom, and it can be very expensive, extremely overwhelming. And then I realized, like, wow, then we will do the elimination diet with my clients. And then suddenly they come back and they're like, and then, I go down the symptoms list, right? And I'm like, oh, do you still have this? Do you still have that? And they're like, no. And then some women didn't even plan to get pregnant and they get pregnant, right? So there was all these amazing changes started happening. That's why if you have not tried the elimination diet, it really is a great starting point for you to do that. And not supplements. You can add supplements as you're doing the elimination diet, but you cannot out-supplement a good health and good hormonal balance. Okay, I am going to wrap up, you guys, for today. I hope this was helpful and it has given you some visibility on estrogen dominance. If you are more of a, like, I just want to DIY this thing, like I'm like that, I'm a DIYer, I don't need to join a program to tell me what to do, then my book is there. You have a lot of supplements that guide you through, and they are categorized by symptoms of what can help. And if you are the type, you're like, you know what, I just want accountability, I want support, I want to be organized, I want to do it step by step. All of this is like super overwhelming. I don't know where to start. I get that. And that's the reason why we created that program. And the doors are going to open this Sunday. So make sure you're on our mailing list, so you come back here to these pages here, and whether Instagram or you're on Facebook and YouTube, and then we're just gonna guide you through 6 weeks. So the name of the book is Overcoming Estrogen Dominance. We have the questions on this again. So this is the book. And where do I find the elimination diet? You can find in my book. There's I have another book called, oh, actually, let me just lift it up so you guys can see. It just is more than just estrogen dominance. It's called Cooking for Beth. Can you believe it? I was actually making a pudding, and then look at this. I'm such a mess. And I was actually making one of these, and so this is a cherry that got spilled here. Anyway, Cooking for Hormone Balance is another book. And the teal color just now, you can, if you're overseas, you can get it on Book Depository, or you can go and Overcoming Estrogen Dominance. You can get it overseas as well. You just have to pay for the shipping costs. We don't mark up that part at all. We just pass it on to you. You go to overcomingestrogendominance.com and choose your country, then we can ship that for you internationally. All right, you guys, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. No, not yet. It's only Wednesday. Oh dear. I've been working a lot this week. We're getting ready for the program, so it's been a lot of work, but it's all good. I'm super excited. I'm excited about leading the new cohort into good health. One other quick announcement: I've got an amazing guest coming on tomorrow, Dr. Maya Shetreat. She's going to be talking about psychedelics. And hey, you guys, I had the biggest resistance around psychedelics, and I know some of you commented saying, "Don't get on that bandwagon." Just to clarify, this is not for anyone here to get high, and be tripping. We are addressing, and you will see her. She's amazing. She's like a badass witch. And I mean it like in the best way possible, like herbal witch. Like remember that witches were burned on, because the people were afraid of them because they were powerful women. So I mean it from like, really from a place of deep respect and love for her. Anyway, she is one of the top experts on psychedelics and working with psychedelics when everything else has failed. And so if you're dealing with, or if you have someone who's been dealing with like resistance to drugs and anxiety and PTSD, some kind of trauma, there's just nothing else is helping. then consider listening to this tomorrow, because I think it can be life-changing for a lot of people. So anyway, so that's tomorrow. So I keep thinking that my life's on Thursday, but actually my live call tomorrow is going to be Dr. Retreat. By the way, I'm sorry, we cannot do this on Instagram because we can't do 2 platforms at the same time with a guest. So if you're on Instagram, get over yourself, come over on Facebook or watch us on YouTube, and you can watch the interview over there. So, all right. Thanks so much, you guys, and have a great rest of the week. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.